So the purpose of this video is to demonstrate a browser extension that I put together called PrivacyScreen. And what you're seeing in front of you is a source code for that. And I'm going to be demonstrating basically what it does, what the purpose is, and some possible use cases. You can see here in my repository here, PrivacyScreen is a lightweight client-side browser extension used as a digital filter to hide sensitive form inputs, inactive tabs, and unfocused browser windows from prying eyes. So what does this mean? Well, there may be cases where you're out in public on a laptop, sitting beside someone, for example, and you want to do some data entry or fill out some forms on the web. Now, you've seen in password inputs, they typically mask the values of that form input with bullet points, basically to hide the sensitive value that's being inputted. But pretty much every other form input you see on the web is going to be text-based, so you'll actually be able to see the characters that are being typed. And when you're out in public, or if you sense someone is watching over your shoulder onto your laptop screen, you might not be so privy to type in certain sensitive information. I know I might not want someone to see my name if I'm typing that in on a form, or my address, or anything really. The purpose of this extension is to sort of have this digital filter as if it were, as well as a couple different features which I'll demonstrate. So as I said, here's the source code. It's on GitHub. I'll put the link to this repository in the description should you want to check it out, read up on it, look at the code itself in the source folder there, or make any sort of contributions if you'd like. If you feel the need to make a pull request or to fix something, just let me know. And I'll show the installation at the end should you want to install this currently on Firefox. So if we hop over to an example of a bank login, and you can see here, if I were to input my user ID, for example, that's in plain text. And if we inspect this value, you can see here's the actual input field itself being highlighted. And you can see under the actual type attribute, the input type is text. Now, if we were to change this to password, for example, you can see that sort of bullet masking being done in place completely within the browser. If an input type is set to password, that's what it'll look like. But by default, most of these are just set to text. The password, obviously, is set to password. But you might not always want someone to be able to see your user ID. I don't know why you would be doing online banking in public, but in any case, if we actually enable PrivacyScreen here, so you can see I have the actual add-on itself. You can see this is what the options panel looks like for the extension. And you can see you can do a number of different things here. You can see the toggle is on or off. By default, it's on all websites, but you can turn it on or off for the current domain. So if you were to click this on and off, you can actually see already the input fields here are being blurred. All this extension does is find all of the different possible input fields on the current website in the DOM. And in the case of an input form, it'll set a text shadow and make the text actually transparent, so it gives off this blurring effect. But for the actual document-based blurs, which I'll get to in a second, it just puts a blur filter over the actual document object itself. So you can see in this case, if I were to start inputting some data, it's all going to be blurred. And if someone, I know what I'm typing because I can either look at my keyboard or, I don't need to look at my keyboard to know what I'm typing, but, some people do. But in any case, you don't typically need to see what you're typing all of the time. But if someone were to be looking over your shoulder, all they would see is this blurry mess that they can't make out. So you can actually see in the options, there were a couple different settings. As I said, you can toggle this on or off for the actual web page itself, and it'll save that in your local storage. I will mention nothing's being sent to any sort of servers for this. This all runs locally. It's just all being saved in your local browser storage. And you can see there are 4 different options down here, and I'll go over each one. So you can see this first one here, unblur elements on hover. Or on mouse over, and basically what that does, if I were to uncheck that, so you can see we got that unchecked now, it's grayed out, it's not going to unblur this field if I hover my mouse over it. But if I turn that back on, you can see as I hover over, it's going to unblur that. So, that could be useful if you were to be typing in something, and then before you are to submit it, you can just hover over to make sure everything's right. And, at the same time, you're still getting that blurring effect when you need it, and you can unblur it on hover. I'm actually going to switch over to this example page here because this is just an example of a checkout form, which is another use case you could potentially be using this for. You might not want people around you to be able to see your email, for example, your full name, importantly, your address, and especially your credit card number. If you were to put in a credit card number here, that's typically not tokenized, or it's typically not masked as a text form. So same goes with your expiry, your security code, all that type of stuff you typically would not want someone to be able to see. And again, I don't know why you would be purchasing stuff in public like this, but So we went over this first option here to unblur on mouse over. The second option here is to blur unfocused browser tabs. Now, if I were to, for example, open up a new tab here, a new window in Firefox, you can see that the background here, this form that I was originally on, is now blurred because I have this window in focus. So if I were to put them side by side, now you can see if I have two websites or two windows open side by side. Right now I'm focused on this checkout window that we have here, and you can see my portfolio site on the right here is now blurred. If I switch back over to this page, you can see that the previous site we were on is now blurred. So that could be useful for a number of different things. You know, if you're doing two things at once and you want one window to be blurred, for example, or if you're, you know, a little bit reaching here, but if you're streaming your screen, for example, or if you're sharing your screen, you might not want people to be able to make out the different tabs or the different windows you have open in the background, but maybe at a quick glance, you might be able to recognize what you have open. And you can see if I just turn this off, it's gonna, you know, not do that anymore. So now it's not blurring any unfocused tabs. So if we go back to maximizing this here, we can look at the third feature here, the third option, which is to blur the active or the current input field. And again, this is a toggle. So if we toggle this off, what it's going to do is it'll blur everything just as normal, except for the field that you're currently typing. So if I were to put, you know, for full name here, it's not blurring this because I currently have it focused. You can see as we tab over the different input fields here, it's not blurring the active or the current one. Again, that could be useful in some cases, but in some cases you might want everything to be blurred, so we would just turn that back on. And if you do have everything blurred, you know, you might want to ensure you have the unblur on hover, just in case there is a scenario where you might want to see what you're typing. But again, these are sort of hot changes, if you were. So if you were to uncheck this, you know, you don't have to reload the page typically. And, you know, something I was running into with these modern single page JavaScript driven websites is that if you were to listen for every change of the DOM to find, you know, to run the script and find all the other text input forms that might be there, you're going to crash the browser pretty quickly because things are constantly changing in the DOM on these websites. If we look at this last option here, so you can see this is a keyboard shortcut. And what this is basically going to do is toggle on or off that keyboard shortcut, which unfortunately can't be configurable. I really wanted to build in some sort of way to set whatever keyboard shortcut you want for this. But in this case, it kind of makes sense with Alt-L. So if you're familiar with Windows, if you press the Windows key and the L key, that's going to lock your computer. And in the same sense, if you were to press Alt and L with this option enabled, what it's basically going to do is toggle on or off that document blur. So, you know, if you're going to step away for half a second, you know, you can just blur. You know, there could be various use cases for this. If you happen to be sharing your screen and you just want to step away for a sec or something, you know, it might be a good idea to blur your screen like that, just hitting Alt-L. And again, this is a toggle, so you can just turn it on and off as you please. And then obviously, if we were to turn this off, you know, the shortcut's not going to do anything. But, you know, a variety of different options I threw in there I thought might be useful in different scenarios. And again, this extension as a whole may or may not be useful in your current situation. I just sort of thought of the idea one day and thought it might not be too difficult to code because all it's really doing is just adding a class to specific elements on the page to blur them. Again, it's pretty lightweight. It definitely probably could be optimized, but at this point, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. And yeah, I mean, that's about it. Again, if you want to check out the source, it'll be in the description. And, you know, I will mention in terms of the installation, if you go to the GitHub repo, you can actually get a link to the Firefox add-on repository here. I'm sure you can search it in the Find Add-ons section here. But you can see I just posted it a couple days ago when I finished it. And, you know, it's free to download if you want to try it out. So that's about it. I have a couple couple cool ideas in the future for some other stuff, not related to this, but I'm sure I'll post about it on here when the time comes. So anyways, I hope you all have a great day, and stay safe.